Hello everyone, welcome back to another video for me, Beats of my name. And in today's video, I wanna give a backup reaction to the reaction from Boss Nasty about my video as I'm stepping down as a king. I have here also today with me Slippy, who is currently the king of 293, or like the visual face of 293, if you want to say so, when it comes to Diplo and everything like that. Um, yeah, how are you doing, man?
Hey, Beast, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. It's exciting times for 293. Um, I hope that I live up to the confidence that the council has put in me, to put me in the position and to provide our community what they need, going forward. And I look forward to collaborating with you on this, what we're about to do right now.
Yeah, man, sounds good. So as you maybe have saw my other video, I gave there like a very short form of information about um why I stepped down. Like I didn't really give that much of a reason. I think the only reason I gave is that I couldn't handle the position at all anymore in terms of time and like stress and stuff like that. So today in this video I want to go talking about the points Boss Nasty have said, why he have reacted to my video, and give their more infos out to the community, since the intention of the other video was like that. We didn't want to give out every info yet because we still were in the changes from 293. Today we had a town hall meeting where we gave a full overview to the kingdom, what is the future for 293, why we doing what we did, and stuff like that. And because of that came out, now we can also talk about that in the YouTube video. Because again, how would you feel if you find out about these changes over a third platform instead of from your council or from your king directly? I think we all would be kind of disappointed, and we didn't want it to happen, let that happen, and therefore now here's the full info video about why we made the changes, why I stepped down, etc., etc. So the way I want to do that, I want to obviously skip my part from the video, and just react to what Boss Nasty said. So we're gonna do some cuts here, and then whenever we come to the Boss Nasty part, I'm gonna show it to you in the video. So let's jump into the video, guys.
Yo, what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I thought we would switch some things up and get into a little bit more of a topical conversation and video reaction. Now, we're going to be watching, and I'll be giving you my thoughts on a video here from Slef, which says, I stepped down as king. Here is why. Now, most of you know, if you watch my content, I very much like talking about the kind of dark side, or just the kind of taboo-ish side, it really feels like, or let's just say the side of Kingdom Builders that really isn't discussed a lot, which is basically everything that is not progression-based PvP content. And to me, I have always felt that this type of content, or this type of action and tasks that go into the day-to-day life of the game, which is running an alliance, being an officer of an alliance, being a contributing member of an alliance, being a king or queen, managing diplomatic relationships between kingdoms. I mean, everything that you would almost think goes into you being the president of a country and kind of doing all the behind the scenes work, if you will. I love that stuff. And I really think that there's so much value in educating ourselves on what goes into that. And this is hopefully one of those additional paths that we get to go down. So without further ado, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. Here we go. And I want to be very clear here, right? You kind of have to give props very much so to Slef and his management team, because they have ran one of the most, depending on how you've on what level of success you define, they have ran one of the most successful jumper projects that started out seasons ago, and with Hunting Horde, and are still alive to this day. And so to me, even if their project collapsed this season or next season or something drastic happened to the kingdom, I would still consider the project to be a success because they made it past a few seasons and have still been going strong. Again, in whatever sphere of success you define, depending on how many alliances they had going in, how big it was, they ran a successful project. So again, just want to give some flowers where it's due.
I want to give here my 2 cents towards that. The thing is about Core of Strengths project, or also overall projects, is that most of the times people starting these projects who have no fucking idea what they're actually doing there. Like they're just like, oh yeah, I saw that project and it was fun and it was successful. Let's just copy that. And at the end, they don't understand the background work which people don't notice, right? Which the normal members don't see. To give you an example, the council from 293, when we had the diplomacy, when the the groups were announced, and the diplomacy were needed to made, we literally sat there for like how much was it, 8 to 12 hours in the next 2 days from our life into VC together and discuss together how we want to do the team, who can we ally with, who can we not ally with, going through the stats, going through making sure that we picking up the correct ally, going through all this diplomatic stuff as well, the talking, etc., etc. Just that alone, in these 2 days, we sat together 8 to 12 hours in the VC. And that is, obviously stuff which the normal member don't see, right? And obviously, you're also not putting that as a info, like, yeah, that's normal stuff what you do as a leadership, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people misunderstanding that and starting then a project, and it's failing. And I find it pretty sad because there are people, who trusting you, who trusting in your leadership skills, and believing that you're gonna run this project, and ending up after not even 1 month to fail. And this is not only the time consuming from the players, and money may be also consuming from the players, but also the time from yourself you're putting in there for nothing, basically, right? I understand that at some point you need to start and you need to get experience. That's totally correct. But in my opinion, if you had never leadership experience, you shouldn't start by yourself as a project leader or as a R5, right? You should start as a R4 in an alliance to see, first of all, how the background stuff is actually working, to get experience. And then when you feel confident, you can start this type of project. And that is one of the reasons why I would, like he said, was the why the project was so successful and still going on. Because I got 3 years of experience from Rise of Kingdoms, when other experience from other games in terms of, managing something. Plus, I had my first project in April on Core of Dragons on 69 as well, which were also successful. We won the season 1. When people just went over, etc., and just put me down as a king, that's a different story. So, yeah. So thanks for the credits, Boss Nasty there. If you see this video here, we appreciate that.
So I guess just to briefly comment on the first part, I guess he's just stating that because ultimately they are now a more powerful and stronger kingdom, they're probably being somewhat more selective with the people that they bring in order to either avoid going to full status or just trying to maybe teeter on the edge. Unless they're okay going into full status, and if that's the case, then again, they probably would still only be able to bring in a smaller number of people, depending, of course, on the power that they're bringing in as well. So I guess that was just kind of more of a nod to, we're stronger, we just kind of have to be a little bit more careful about how many people we're bringing in overall.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct what he said there. Slippy, if you wanna go into more detail there on this question or this statement from him.
Yeah, so the statement on obviously being more selective on bringing in members and setting kind of basically a power rating, basically no T4s, right? It seems harsh, but we have to realize the direction that we are trying to go as a kingdom, right? You started the project, right? You and a select few of officers. and you started your kingdom up, you did your jump, and things were going well. But remember, your end goal, you've publicly said this, is to have this kingdom be a top kingdom, top tier, number one, top kingdom. In order to do that, we had to start addressing some of the things that were happening internally, right? You were king, you had a couple officers. One thing that does not get said enough about this type of game is the sheer amount of time and effort that's required to do things like running the kingdom. It essentially is like a second job. And with a lot of folks, right, this is not a free to play game, or at least free to play overtly friendly game. So chances are you got to generate income in some way to support your gaming habit, which means you probably got a job. And the amount of time that's needed to support a kingdom of that echelon, of that size, becomes excessive, right? And so with you, having a life, a job, family, your content creation, things like that, something starts to slip because you just don't have enough hours in the day to be able to support. I'm going to use the word clients here, your clients, right? Your members of your kingdom or of your community, which is what we're striving to be, is a community more than just a kingdom, need your support, and you can't do it alone, right? And you start to see your level of support within your kingdom wane as you just don't have the hours of the day to do it. So what we did as a council is come up with the council system, and we're coming up with a follow the sun type of model to support our community, where we have the availability of a high level officer in R5 essentially, right? As well as other officers to provide basic support for the kingdom. Now, in order to be able to set up these structures and systems and processes required to support hitting that Class A, Paragon A size community, you got to have the foundation in place to support it. So we had to take a lighter migration in order to solidify our structure to support bigger migrations in the future. What do you see with a lot of kingdoms that they do is they bring in those 100 people, those 150 people every migration, but they don't have their leadership set up or the structure of their processes and kingdom to support that large scale of amount of clients, right? So the word I want to use here is scalability. We needed to kind of solidify our structure for more scalability. Does so putting in the, hey, we're going to be selective, we're not really going to take T4s, we're going to be selective in who we bring in and be very very stringent on the new incomers, is because we don't want to get 150 new people in while we're solidifying the structural change of the organization, right? Because it complicates things, it makes things more difficult. You want to make sure that kind of make sure your processes are in place to allow for that big explosive growth, which we strive to achieve with our next migration.
Yeah, you basically said a word on, and alone that should give a lot of folks already the answer why we did the migration, why I said mostly no T4 anymore, even through we know that sometimes T4 are more active than T5. It's just the state of the fact that T5 is just more variable when it comes to fighting rallies, garrison. It is just by the fact like that. So, and then I also notice, not only in the video but also through the community, if you just select T5, then you're ending up also getting T5s which are not active. And yes, right, that could happen. But for that, we're not only looking on the merits, for example, like other folks said, but we're only looking on merits to accept members. We go through the entire account. We're having a chat with each migrant or like with each interest player, and by that we trying then to get infos about this account. How many days got played, what is the troop type, how active are you, etc., etc. And sometimes when these interest players come out also by themselves, telling about their real life, what they're doing, etc., etc. And that's how we selecting our migrants. We're not just looking on the power. Oh yeah, that's 120 million. But only 5 million merits. You still got in because you're T5. That's not how we're doing it, and that's also not our intention. for doing that. So let's watch what Boss Nasty says for the next statement.
Okay. He's probably going to say a little bit more. However, what I will say is that if the primary reason is that you're just trying to do more R5 rotations, that doesn't mean you have to switch from a king system to a council system. Let me explain exactly, most likely, what the king system is that he's referring to, where essentially you just have kind of like an R6 position. That's really what this type of system is, and or can be, where you just have one person who's an R5 and doesn't rotate. Now, you can basically do something like where you have the head R5 and you can still do rotational R5s. Now, you could just move the R5 up to an R6. And then, so an example of this would be Slef could just slide up to an R6 position, and then he would just have a number of R4s that maybe elevate to R5s, even though they're still in the R4 position, and then they just rotate, right? And you can still keep the same system. You just have to do some very slight modifications, even though it's really just word adjustments, right? A word association at that point. Compared to him now going to a council system, which means that you're not having kind of a head, tiebreaker, one person that can kind of make the final call and final say if and when needed. Now it's you might have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many. Usually it's like 2 to 3, 2 to 4. Sometimes it's 1 rep per alliance if you're running a council system. But the challenge is that if you're not running an odd number, then you kind of, I don't want to say screw yourself, but you kind of put yourself into tricky territory, because then you don't have a tie break. So an example is if you had 2 or 4, you would basically have to have 2 and 0, right, if you're doing votes or things like that, and or you'd have to do 3-1 if you have 4, or 4-1, right, because a 1-1 or a 2-2 split would basically mean that you're tied and you really can't move anywhere at that point. So the thing with council systems as well is that at times, if you don't have a dedicated tie break in some way, shape, or form, it can stagnate. It can slow decisions. It can make conversations take longer. It can make policy changes take a lot longer, compared to having kind of a king system where it really just depends on how you have your system set up. What I kind of often speak to as one of the efficient things is you kind of do a table talk where everyone gets an opportunity to chime in and have a conversation and to give their feedback. And if you want to do some kind of like a water temperature vote gauge, cool. If not, that's fine. And then from there, you can have whoever is your head honcho or your tiebreak person basically listen to all the feedback and then make the best decision based on the feedback and how they see it that is in line with what the kingdom's goals are. What's the philosophy? What's the foundation that it was built upon? Because that's really what you're trying to stay in line with, right? Unless some of your core foundations are changing, and hopefully if they're changing for the right reasons, and or if they just needed to. But if not, those are kind of the things that you would typically keep in line with. So let's continue going.
All right. So what he said about the council and king system, what's the difference and stuff like that? Yes, that's correct. Like the king system is basically like a dictatorship, right? Where one guy or one girl is in charge of the kingdom, and then have the end saying of everything, and therefore, or like the rest of the leadership is basically like a support for this one person and giving advice out, like a king is working, that's it. The council system ending up that we did it because of exactly the reason what Slippy said earlier, right? And herefore it's really important to say also, you creating a council system which people you all obviously trust and which you have worked together for like a longer time, right? Which you have similar goals, you have similar thoughts, if you're ending up in a type of conversation where you don't agree with someone, you still can explain your thoughts, and you're ending up maybe with a middle way and something like that. And that's what we did in 293. If you're fine with that, Slippy, I would show the pictures what we have in leadership structure on the Discord.
Oh, 100%. We should give out the leadership structure publicly. Um, but yeah, I mean, the idea of the council is it's a council. I'm a member of the council. You know, is the function of the title of the king is to keep the council on task, make sure that discussions are productive and move forward. It is not a well, what I say goes kind of deal, right? You get the temperature of how the council feels about things, bounce ideas off each other, and work collaboratively, right? And while each member of the council has a vote, each member of the council will also have a specialization that they do, right? Which you'll show in the org structure and stuff when you post it on the YouTube video, right? Each member of the council is set up to run a certain part of the organization, and hey, they have their own team that they essentially run, right? And this
Yeah,
way, each member has investment into the community as well as each R4 has investment in as well. Obviously, you know, we do the way Call of Dragons community and things like that are set up, the way the game itself is built, you got to have an R5, right? Someone to press the register button for registering for the next KVK, someone to press the allow migration button, right? So you got to have a person that fills that kind of visible role and presses those buttons ultimately, which you know is what I got I guess the word elected to do is, or one of my favorite words is voluntold, um, to do this role, which I'm perfectly fine with. I appreciate that folks have the confidence in me to you know kind of just be there to do that role. But yeah, you know, we have the generals, they'll perform their functions, we'll be able to support, you know, the kingdom much more efficiently this way when everyone can focus on specific areas that are set up to kind of go with their strengths, right? People tend to perform better when they are working in an area that they enjoy, right? No one tends to do well when it's something they hate, right? Like if you hate doing data and spreadsheets and you're the general of data and spreadsheets, the likelihood that the data and spreadsheets look good or even usable is going to be next to none because you're
yeah,
just not excited about the job, right? You're not
yeah,
excited about doing this. And especially when you know, you have a real life outside of the game, right? And then now you're going to come to the game and do something you don't want to do necessarily, so it helps with that balance and making sure that folks are excited to be part of the community and grow and be a kingdom and come together and accomplish great things as a team with a collaborative effort.
yeah. I while you have talked about that, I already showed the picture from the Discord. And there you saw, guys, how we made how we made our structure with each assigned role and giving a little bit of a detail of what this role is doing. If it was too fast for you, you can obviously pause the video and reread it. Um, and yeah, that will be also, I guess, also be public on our Discord. So our Discord is overall public, so if you want to join and be like just hanging out with us and chatting, you can do that. And then there you can also see the leadership structure. um and yeah, that's the reason basically behind it, that exactly what you said, that we don't have one person for everything, that we have multiple persons, splitting a part of and doing their own thing, and so that everyone can only focus on that. However, we still doing the thing of that every leadership channel is visible by for everyone. So we doing that. So we have these different teams, right? Where we have also the R4 signed up for, but we still make it possible that every R4 can read every team's chat. And we're doing that to have exactly no communication problems, and that everything is clear for everyone. However, they should still just focus on their part and just be able to read the other channels. And therefore, we have no internally in the leadership, no communication problems. Everyone is up to date, what's going on. Um, And I can just suggest that to everyone out there as well. If you want to have no communication problems in the leadership chat, you should make sure when you have these type of different team setups, like we did, when you make sure that these leadership chats from these teams are also be public to the whole leadership, so that not only the war team can see the war chat. And by that, first of all, you don't need to ask questions because they can just check by themselves what's going on, and you reduce by that the communication problems in the team itself. So let's continue watching what was nicely said to Rand. The feedback we got.
I wish he would have explained.
What I want to talk about.
So the one thing I'll just say here is I wish he would have went into more detail. I wish he would have explained this is how we had the system set up previously.
Right, we did this now, so
These were some. Now that we're transitioning
Yeah,
to this council
unfortunately, we
system,
couldn't,
this is how
you
it
know,
operates.
you couldn't get in depth on your previous video on what we were doing structurally. Also, your previous video was about 3 weeks late. So that's
yeah, that
another
was
thing, right?
intentional. That was intentional
Um,
also.
yeah, it was 3 weeks later after we've already made the changes and we're making sure we were going in the right direction and things like that, right?
Yeah,
Before we went overtly public, right?
yeah,
Um, we wanted to make sure that we were in the right steps, everything was done, and then of course, obviously, we don't want to put out something on YouTube before it's put out to our own people. That's just really a terrible way to find something out. Is
yeah,
externally versus from your own leadership team that you have the confidence in, right? These players have the confidence in us to run the kingdom, to allow them to play the game that they enjoy in the way that they enjoy. They don't have to worry about these little things that have such big impact on their enjoyment of the game, right? I think of
yeah,
things as simple as, oh, I need to go transfer RSS from my farm to myself so that I could, heal, I could get back in the fight, right? Having a member worry that, well, if I switch alliances, am I going to be standing outside in the cold waiting for someone to open the door to the Shell Alliance so I could get in, transfer my RSS to come back? Like, am I going to spend that's going to take 20 minutes or 20 seconds, right? And so we wanted to go this route with more scalability, more availability, follow the sun. So there's always someone on to provide support no matter what time it is, right? There's a member of leadership around to assist with administrative as well as other functionality, right?
yeah,
And transparency is the word I want to use to discuss the previous topic, right? Which is, the event team knows what the war team is doing. The war team can see what the event team is talking about. The data team can see what the war team is discussing. It can provide feedback to each other as well as have visibility, right? So we have
yeah,
transparency at the top of the organization, which allows us to communicate and have more transparency downwards within the organization, right? There's a lot of, with games like this, it's a war game. There's shadow games and spying and scouting and all these different things, right? And what happens is a lot of kingdoms tend to forget to be transparent with their own members because there's such fear of all that information getting out, right? And
yeah,
so having this structure allows us to be much more transparent with our own people. Hey, here's what's going on. Here's this. Hey, I want to do I want to do a TSL push. I want to push for strongest lord and I want to get, the most points possible on day 1. Hey, reach out to the events team. Let's get you on the roster. We're going to set up hey, on this date, this time, are you available for title, buff, everything? Are you going to be ready to go? We'll reserve this amount of time for it so that you have the time to set aside in your day to do what you want to do with your account versus no structure at all. It's kind of the Wild West, especially with us going to grow and ultimately try to achieve that goal of, being the number one big boy alpha, class A community, that you have to be able to scale it up to that size, right? We don't want to grow and then we can't support it and we just
yeah,
crumble under the weight of not being able to support our own people.
yeah, exactly.
now, and this is the feedback that's relevant to those changes in the system on why people are enjoying it. Going into those levels of detail instead of what he's kind of doing now, which is giving just a broad, vague response.
Exactly what we said already from the at the start of the video. The type of the video was intentional, not giving out yet every information, just the infos which were needed for me as a content creator to make understanding of that. Why do I respond now differently on stream, etc.
It does. My point is, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying if you're the average viewer, you're not really understanding as much as you probably would like to, especially if you're someone who has not been a part or has instituted these types of systems before.
Yeah, that's correct as well. That's why we're doing this video here now and giving more infos out.
Okay, so before we get to the end, let me just comment on that. So I was just taking some notes, as I usually do when I'm watching these, so I can make sure that all my thoughts are aligned. So the first one he says is talking about only accepting T5 players. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. And I say that because obviously the lower...
I think we answered that also earlier already, right? If I remember correctly, you're gonna say now that T4 player can be more active than T5 and stuff like that. I also saw, like I said earlier, normal members also talked about that, not just him as a content creator. I'm gonna repeat it one more time. We're not only looking on merit, right? We're looking on the overall count, every stat which is visible by the game, and then also taking into the account of how the person talks, if you're giving just short answers, if you're giving like long detailed answers, all this type of stuff is what we're looking for in by that, from the overall package of the account and the player itself, we then deciding as a council together if we're accepting this person or not. And that's how we did it the last migration. That's how we did accept the 32 players.
Powered players, the lower the power of the player, the more you can bring in. And so if you're going to try and kind of min-max this and you want to be able to bring in, I mean, because ideally what makes sense is you want to try to bring in 150 players every migration cycle. Now, this is not always going to be achievable, but my point is that should be what you're aiming to try and do, regardless if you get there or not, because you're given 150 slots. You should be trying to fill up to all of those slots every migration season. And how do you do that? Well, you do that.
I think, Slippy, I'm talking for both of us if I say we disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily 100% disagree with him on it. Yes, you want to continue to grow, you want to continue to bring people in, but like we said earlier, we needed to ensure that our structure can survive that, right? Just bringing in people for the sake of bringing in people can be catastrophic, right? Because you got to think of personality issues, activity levels, things like that, right? You got to look at everything all together. And of course, you got to have the structure to support that, right? If you add on 100 people and you don't have enough R4s, or you don't have enough shell alliances. Like there's so many things that you have to make sure are in place before you bring in that amount of stuff, right? I think bringing in 100 people, yeah, that's great. But if you bring in 100 people and all you got is a king and two R4s, that's not going to work, right? Those 100 people are going to come in and be like, oh man, like I need this and I can't get a response and no one's responsive, right? So you got to build a structure for it. So we were very selective with our migration so that we can make sure that we can scale up to this level of migration. We didn't want to be careless and just continually grow. I mean, we had back-to-back seasons of big migrations, right? And you always have that groans and pains with every migration, right? Some people's personalities don't gel. I mean, let's be realistic. Call of Dragons is basically like an MMO community combined with a MOBA community, right? It's very, very competitive. right? It's very, very rivalrous is the word I want to use, but sometimes it goes to the point of enemies, right? Enemies, where people like really hold grudges and hatreds, and it's also MMO, right? A lot of people know each other, they hang out, they spend a lot of time together, and then, being that it's a smaller MMO community, a lot of times these interactions are there. People have pasts with each other, right?
Yeah.
Especially a younger growing kingdom like we are. And I say younger, we're a year old, right? But there's kingdoms out there that have a whole year plus on us, plus history with each other, right? This
Yeah.
isn't a MMO with millions of players where you might see someone else you ran into before. It's almost guaranteed if you've been playing this game for a year, you're going to know someone on the other side, whether they were your ally or a hated enemy or something like that, right? So there's a lot of that history and personality stuff. And so we want to make sure we set up our community to be able to work with the community with their needs as individual members, as well as be good stewards for the community, right? For within and without, right? Meaning within our own organization, as well as dealing with and working together with other organizations and possibly, having a nice little rivalry with other organizations. Because someone who's on the other side of your team this season could be your ally next season, right? So you got to have that good competitiveness without that toxicity and things like that, right? So you got to
Yeah.
we chose to be very selective because we're not trying to, go too far without vetting our people until we have the structure in place where we can vet at a larger scale.
Yeah. Um, 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 Normally, yeah, I agree with like you want to grow, especially when you have the structure for that. However, it is not always, in my opinion, the case how you want to do it, especially when you need to look individually on each migration, and you need to decide based on that how many you want to get in. Because I think it's not always healthy to get every migration, whether you have the system or not. But from the standpoint of you want to have every migration, the maximum amount of people getting in is not the correct answer in my opinion. If you would have said now that you should look towards what do your kingdom needs in terms of migrants and how many you want to get in, yes, that's in my opinion the correct answer. Is the correct answer for that you get now every season 150 people in? Then is it so, right? But it is based on your needs versus what you can do versus what you can't do, right? And that's very important for everyone to understand. You cannot just get every migration 150 people and expect that to work. Like you need to look individually on how your situation is going on in the kingdom, and based on that, you then whether say yes, full migration or slow migration.
By not accepting only 100 to 150 mil players, because you'll actually be able to then bring more overall players in. However, it really is up to each kingdom and their management teams for how they want to go about that, depending on how.
Yeah, like he said, like it's obviously up to every kingdom. I get his point, what he said with like you want to get every migration 150 people in. But at the end, like you said, it's obviously up to the individual situation from each kingdom.
How that kingdom is set up. I'm just simply stating the facts on if you're trying to bring in the most amount of people, you want to have the highest overall activity, you want to have the least amount of player attrition and drop off, you bring in as many players as possible to mitigate that. So the margins are a lot lower. And so that's why for me it's kind of 50-50. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe you could bring in people that are like around 60 to 70 mil on average if you're just trying to go like maybe min T5. And yeah, okay, you could probably bring in more people than if you're looking at 100 mil plus. Otherwise, you're just always going to have to be kind of flirting with that crowded to full status, going to, back to, going to, back to, if you're only going to be focusing on T5. Because you could still bring in people that are 40, 50 million T4, that people even that are close to T5, and they're maybe still willing to spend or willing to maybe be more active and more contributing than some of the T5 players. I mean, it's not crazy to say that we've seen a number of T4 players that have been more active and more PvP contributing and engaged than some T5 players. And that's not to say that that's just a complete across the board, but there have been some. And my point in saying that is looking for those diamonds in the rough, right? It's not only say that you're only going to be able to get to where you want to if you only recruit a specific
I think
threshold
he's
or
not
power
saying
threshold.
anything anymore towards the video related. The no more T4 player who is relevant regarding the type of player that you want to take in, especially regarding the ambition that is conveyed here. Most players that are serious about the game will be T5 at this point, and players that are still T4 will be lagging behind already T5 players for a long time in troop numbers. The state of the game lead to 99% of T4 player, except if they spend significantly in heroes artifact paths, to be unable to have the same impact on the field relative to their power than most T5. T5 troops are way more efficient than T4 troops. The percentage of power allocated to troops divided by total power is way higher for T5 compared to T4. Yeah, that's basically right. Like T4 players is unfortunately just the fact of that they're falling behind at this point. And we noticed that especially the last two KVKs, like in each KVK we were moving on forward and we faced more and more T5 players. It just happened that more and more T4 players were feeling like they're not efficient anymore on the field. And they said it by themselves. They said it to us, hey guys, I don't feel like efficient anymore. That's the reason why I migrate out. Like legit, that were T4 players saying, which have contributed a lot, like gotten millions of merits, up to 10 million as the T4 players from the field fighting, not from merit trading. And they by themselves said, yo, with a way of how the kingdom grows and how the kingdom go into the future, it doesn't feel like a variable anymore for me to be here as a T4 player, which is completely understandable because it is unfortunately the fact that the difference between T4 and T5 is just that much, right? So yeah, this comment is yeah, it's a good state point.
Yeah, I mean, some of the guys who left, right, of their own choice because they were T4s, they made that decision. You got to understand that it's also not enjoyable, right? As a player, you know, when you're in a kingdom, you want to help. You want to do what you can. You step out of your castle and some T5 player 5 marches and just slaughters your entire army. And now your hospital is full and you're free to play or a low spender and you don't have the ability to get back on the field. And even if you do, you get slaughtered again because your opponent is a 200 person shell with 180 T5s in it, right? So some of the players, it wasn't enjoyable, right? And
Yeah,
the direction that 293 has been headed toward is towards being, a number one top kingdom, get up there, super competitive. As you get up there in the higher echelons, the tier of your troops starts to become a little bit more important season over season over season, right?
yeah,
And so it's a sad truth that, if you're not at T5 a year in, maybe a year and a half at most, any kingdom that's a year and a half in, you're probably just gonna get in on the battlefield mostly stepped on, right? And then of course the way mechanics work in this game, right? Like if you're a higher tier than your opponent, right? T5 over T4, you wound them even harder, right? So every individual loss is felt more significantly by the T4. Right, so
yeah,
it becomes much harder. These guys have to try harder. They have to RSS heal a lot more. They have to keep going back out there over and over again and try super hard to micro better, and it becomes, much less enjoyable to have to put in that much extra effort, right? So for some. Others, they love it. Playing the underdog and things like that could be a lot of fun, but it's not for everyone, right?
yeah,
Um, it's a sad truth of this type of game, right? Is that there's things to it. You see that in games like World of Warcraft, right? You could enjoy World of Warcraft all day, but you can't do raids if you're not max level, right? It just doesn't
yeah,
work. You're gonna go into the raid and get one shot by the dragon's fire breath or something like that because you're level 70 and it's a level 80 boss. I think they don't even let you enter raids in that game, but I haven't played WoW in a while. Forgive me. But it's that kind of stuff. That's just the gaming thing, right? Like there's echelons and tiers to it, and there's obviously advantages. And in a game that is monetized based on spending money to accelerate these advantages, it's difficult for some players, right?
Yeah.
Um, I do think that, we didn't just say no T4s because it was just, well, no, T4s are useless. That's not the case. We wanted a very controlled migration, and putting out a blanket statement that, for lack of a better word, disqualifies a chunk of the potential migrants instantly without any type of, you know, falsehoods or interactions between them and the recruiters helps out on both sides, right? You don't, if you're not an IT guy, you're not going to apply to an IT job, right? You're going to apply to a job that what you could do. If you're a chef, you're going to apply to be, a line cook or something in a restaurant. You're not going to go apply be the CEO of Apple or something like that if you never touched, an electronic device in your life, right? So it's kind of that kind of mindset to, kind of make it easier for our transition, right? As the kingdom grows, as the game goes through its changes and stuff too, these kind of things will change, right? Maybe we, next migration, we're like, hey, T4 is applied. Like, look, they got these new things in the game. Look at the direction the game's going, right? Army groups, exemplars, the last like 3 or 4 heroes that have come out all have, you know, buffs there and things that help people around them, right? Exemplar army groups,
Yeah.
Tara, Danfell, the new mages, Blondie Goat Girl and Thunderballs with their offensive debuffing. Like, yeah, they're not printing merits, but they're providing utility. So like a T4 player provides a function now. They can assist on the battlefield. They may not print merits, but they help other people print
Yeah.
merits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the game seems to be actually, the developers, I should say, seem to be trying to assist with that problem, right? Making it more team based and things like that. So yeah, we had a limited migration this time. I just want to say publicly that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case every time. This time we wanted to go small and kind of solidify our structure so that we can grow without faltering in our growth path.
Yeah. Um, we're already 50 minutes in. Damn, the time running, man. Um,
I know.
but I think we answered pretty detailed now every question which came up, maybe for both Nasty and for the community. So I hope with that video here you got your questions answered. Um, Also for the end of the video, you maybe have saw it already. 293 itself have rebranded and under a new name and under a new logo, as you can see now here in the background of the video. And yeah, that's the name of what we going for now. If we gonna change in the future again, we don't know. We will see. But that's for now the name under what 293 gonna run. And yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I thank Slippy for joining me here on this video and answering with me together here these questions which came up. And as always, guys, I wish you a great rest of the day. Have a great start into the next day. Stay healthy, everyone. And we're gonna see us then soon on the next one. Goodbye, guys.